And this is where I begin talking about the show, because I love theater. And I let myself get shunted away from the theater for a very long time. And finding my way back to it. Of the shows that I've managed to see, and since I started finding my way back to it, I could not have picked a better two to welcome me back into that world, which I'm knocking at the doors at, saying, hey, remember me? I was planning on coming here someday, a long time ago. Remember me? But, so, got my folio. I went to the theater to see this show. And I will start with walking into the theater, not the building itself, but the room where the set had been constructed. Hadn't really known what to expect, but I'd seen the National Live broadcast, and I knew that this was an unconventional theater space, and that they'd chosen it because it had originally been produced in an unconventional theater space. And so they wanted to be able to replicate that space as well. But what they did to make use of the armory, they constructed a moor, a misty, wind-blown heath. You walked into, they had the audience divided into clans depending on where they were seating for organizational purposes, and you filed in, guided by the head of your clan, and announced by a bell and the ringing and the announcement of your clan, and you'd walk through the doors into this moor, this dark, cold, windy space. I mean, it wasn't actually windy, but there was like the sound, and there was this low rumble that just sort of instantly creates this different, fantastical space. And just the moor stretching out in all directions with the edges of the building in darkness, so you can't really see where it ends. Just this sense of massive space. And then the creatures, the witches, and other creatures of the moor watching you as you file through this space towards this replica of Stonehenge with the sort of arena theater sitting. I mean, it was two sides instead of four, but it was like going towards an arena where this sort of sacred tale-telling is going to take place, where you're going to witness this tale of magical battle that's going to be enacted before you. It was just a wonderful atmosphere. I really wanted to go racing across the moor and join the creatures that were on it, but that would have been very, very naughty of me. And I wouldn't have fit in because I wasn't in costume, but I could look at them. And I did, and I was like... And then we filed into our seats. And Lady Macbeth was in the chapel lighting candles while people came in. And it was just an amazing atmosphere that got created. What, for me, were the highlights of this show? The witches. The witches were an embodiment of the space, an embodiment of nature. Shakespeare uses nature in his plays in wonderful strange ways. And they really brought that element out with this particular production. Theater, some people are in love with the idea of realistic theater, where everything is just realistic, and it's like watching someone in their living room or something like that. But in my opinion, theater is at its best when it uses this three-dimensional ability to create meaning and symbolic and metaphorical meaning with gestures and lighting and physical aspects of the space, when people are more than just the people that they're being, when they're also part of the environment that's created. And it's actors interacting with actors that are embodying that sort of representation, which allows the audience, as if it were real, that allows the audience then to experience that power, to lend weight to symbolism and metaphor, and which otherwise wouldn't necessarily be easily created or maintained. The witches in this play, it was a brilliant use of their characters. They were there when you walked in, they were there at the beginning, they were there throughout, and the lighting moved with them. That was really well done. There were some other things that they did in using this sort of symbolic illusions, like the floating dagger. But I think the witches were the most effective. I wonder if the lighting, being so far away, made some things harder to create. Because I remembered from the National Theatre Live broadcast, the scene with the table and Banquo's ghost being eerier. And I wonder if that was maybe lighting diffusing through the space in a not easily controlled way. I'm not sure. Let's see, what else? What else was a highlight for me? The porter scene. Who's the porter? I'm really bad at remembering people's names and faces. So, porter, Tom Goodwin. He did an amazing job. I really liked what they did with the porter, because it was just one person, and he was hilarious, and he was just there in the thing, and everybody was just entranced by him. And in the broadcast there, they had this thing with windows, and it was amusing, but I had thought that bit was a bit gimmicky, but this version of it worked a lot better for me. And kudos to Tom Goodwin for drinking a raw egg in every single performance. I mean, unless, of course, he didn't actually drink the raw egg, in which case he gets to keep the kudos, but I want the cup, the trick cup. Although I suspect that, considering he was like 2 feet from an audience member when he drank the egg, that they probably would have noticed if he hadn't actually drunk it. That was hilarious. Not just the egg, but the whole thing. the whole thing. He did an amazing job. So the witches were amazing. Tom Goodwin was amazing. And Richard Coyle, who was Macbeth, he did a really good job. A really, really amazing job. I always find it fascinating watching different actors do Shakespeare, because every actor has a different way of interacting with the text, and everybody has different levels where they're connected with it. And watching him, you could tell that he's not only he not only understands the complexity of the text, he carries the intent of the text through it, but also an immediacy and in the moment existing in the text. Just an understanding of how the text springs from the grief that it conveys. And it wasn't just that scene where he discovers where Macduff discovers that his wife and children were killed. You could see this throughout the rest of his performance as well. So let's see.